Hello, I'm Brian Roten, senior reporter for Hotel News Now, and this is the next episode in our series looking at how demand is playing out for U.S. hotels over the summer. Today, I am joined by Jonathan Wikse. He's the complex general manager at the AC Hotel Miami Aventura and the Aloft Miami Aventura. Jonathan, thank you so much for being here with us today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, talk about your career, talk about your hotels, the market. What do you got for us?
Yeah, of course. Brian, thanks for having me on today. I'm really looking forward to our conversation. So, again, my name is Jonathan Wicks. I am the complex GM for both the AC and the Aloft hotels in Aventura, Florida, as part of Peachtree Group Hospitality Management. I started in the industry back in 2012 as a guest service agent. From there, I spent some time as an assistant GM working with Hilton Worldwide, followed by my first GM opportunity with Peachtree Group back in 2019 in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Since then, and in my time with Peachtree, I've operated in markets like Fort Lauderdale, Miami, the Gulf Coast, Georgia Coast, and most recently North Georgia before returning back home to South Florida.
Gotcha. So that's the very southeast of the U.S. is your expertise.
Yes, yeah, that's my wheelhouse.
Great. Well, I think that's going to be very helpful for us today. So, can you kind of give us an overview of the hotels that you oversee? Give us an idea of where they are, what the community is like around it, and the demand mix that you typically get.
Yeah, of course. So these hotels, the two of them, they're located in prime real estate directly across the street from one another in North Miami in a subset called Aventura. I like to think of the area as we're a little too far south to be Fort Lauderdale. We're right at that north tip of Miami, so we're in the sweet spot, kind of between the two. It is a pretty affluent area, a lot of culture down here. It's very very nice place. I'm very blessed to call this my work area. As far as demand mix at the hotel, so North Miami market still tends to hold pretty true to its regular booking mix. It's highly centered on transient leisure. The demand cycle here is known for a pretty robust high season in quarter one. We get a little bit of a cooling period this time of the year in the summer months, which is about the only thing cooling down here. And then we get a ramp back period in that fall winter area. Uh, some of the things that have happened, so events such as Formula One that entered Miami a few years ago have shifted that demand cycle in our favor the past few years by
Okay.
extending our season window from late April into early May. This opposed to previous years where that period post Easter holiday kind of posed a question mark for us demand wise.
Mhm.
As we're currently in the summer off season, mix this time of year tends to be a little bit more sustained by corporate travel, but we do still get a pretty fair share of those looking to explore Miami and enjoy some well deserved staycations.
Gotcha. So, as you look at what you have, you know, currently in your hotel and how things played out, post, spring break, how does that meet up with the projections that you had earlier in the year? Are things working out as you expected, or are there any changes?
Yeah, Brian. So by far and large, demand in the market for 2024 has been pretty in line with the projections that we accounted for. We're
That's
seeing
always
a
nice.
similar, yeah, it's a blessing, especially after recent years and us entering kind of that new normal and everything like that. But there's a similar mix and demand to some of the years that we've had previously, with the biggest variances coming from either one-off events such as Taylor Swift's Eras tour coming to the market in the fall,
Hmm.
as well as a couple of concert series that we typically see in the summertime that have now relocated to those winter months. It did leave a little bit of a demand shift in those months, but we're also seeing massive demand on the newly scheduled dates and finding some new business down here with the vacancies.
Gotcha. So, as you look out to, we're just about hitting July here as we record. As you look to July, you look into August, and then into September. How does business on the books look for you?
Yeah, so like I said, summer on the East Coast of South Florida is widely known as kind of our off season. Q1 is really when we, get most of our business done. But apart from a few standout events, the weather warming up across the country does allow the leisure travelers to utilize some of their other options, both in the U.S. and outside of.
Hmm.
Traditionally, this gives us a little bit more of an opportunity to retool and refresh ahead of that fall ramp up period I mentioned.
Hmm.
That in mind, business on the books and pace are well within line of what we would expect to see for the period. Like I'd mentioned, we did have a couple of events shift from Q3 into Q4, which manifested a little bit of a gap for us. But sales and revenue teams have done an excellent job prioritizing these openings, finding different, events that maybe we haven't dealt in before, just to keep us in line with that expected norm for the time of year.
Gotcha. So given that, this is your off season, for the guests who are booking at your properties, what are they looking for out of their stays? Is it any different from any other time of year during the heavier, demand seasons, or is it, pretty much it's the same? Is it different? How do their
Yeah.
expectations, their
So
demands change?
base guest desires ultimately come down to the very simple things. They want something that's clean, that's operational and friendly, regardless of the time of the year. You want to feel like
Hmm.
where you're staying, it's well maintained, everything's working well, and that hospitality piece and the attention to detail are there. More so, especially in this time of year, as we do see, kind of more of a pickup in our leisure travelers. They want to definitely feel like they're getting their value for their spend.
Hmm.
With the mix of leisure and corporate travel that we have at these hotels, while their reasons for travel may be different, a lot of those expectations remain consistent across the board. Now, one thing that we do tend to see that seems to matter a little bit more this time of the year is proximity to places of interest. The amenities that are offered on site are absolutely important. The guests definitely consider this when they're booking, but travelers like having areas to venture, like shopping malls, attractions, restaurants. Being close to that seems to matter a lot more in this time of year than I've noticed in years past.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm curious, just given where you are in the market, how are you able to use that to your advantage with the guests who are coming in?
For us, leaning into proximity and the offerings of our surrounding neighbors has been a massive selling point for these hotels. So we are nestled in a pretty prime pocket here, where we're in walking distance to a variety of 10 plus different restaurants of different backgrounds. We've got a major shopping mall up the road, a reasonable commute to the beach, all while still having all of our own outlets in house. And it's something that definitely resonates with our leisure guests, but also it'd be surprised how much it matters to the corporate travelers too, where they get tired of sitting in an office all day. They get tired of being on an airplane traveling. They want to stretch their legs a little bit and explore. So, when we're looking at selling and we're talking about marketing that for the hotels, we
Mhm.
definitely highlight location in the obvious places like our online booking sites. But for us, the most important is that we make sure that we showcase this with all of our prospective groups, our new corporate accounts, while conducting our tours. With my return to the market, just a teaser I'm working towards is partnering with some of these locations a little bit more intentionally, just to further amplify that guest experience. But that can be our secret for now.
Until this publishes.
Exactly.
So that actually does lead into the next question I have, just as far as looking at what the guests are hoping for during their summer stays. How does that influence the way that you approach your sales and marketing strategies?
Yeah, of course. So, again, for these leisure guests, what tends to matter the most is that they have things that are nearby. Both of our properties boast some pretty fantastic amenities on their own. We've got two rooftop pools that are fantastic. We've got a rooftop outlet that's located at one of our hotels at the AC, which the guests are definitely big into that. But also knowing that while they're down in South Florida, while they're visiting, that they have other things to do. This is something that our sales team makes sure that we market on socials, making sure that when we're reaching out to different potential travel agencies, especially for those coming in from different parts of the US, from South America, that we're making sure that we highlight these things for the travelers, because it really does seem to make a difference.
Gotcha. And so, something I wanted to follow up on from earlier, just looking at how the guests are finding your hotels. Uh, Is it are you getting a lot of repeat guests coming in? Are you getting is the new business coming in directly? What's your kind of your channel mix? And I'm curious also about the booking windows, how long or short they are.
Yeah. So for our hotels, we actually are starting to see a pretty even mix of return guests that have been coming to the hotel for years. That was honestly, one of the big benefits of us coming out of 2019, 2020 with the pandemic was that we
Mhm.
did get some clientele that maybe hadn't traveled to the Aventura area before, that North Miami sector, that have found that they really do enjoy it. So we're definitely getting our repeat clientele from there. But then we do still get our fair share of first timers that, whether they're drawn in by the proximity to Hallandale Beach or to the mall that we have out here, which is fabulous. They're coming out here, they're finding it for the first time. In terms of booking windows, this time of the year, we do tend to see a pretty small booking window for the hotels. We definitely get our pace outside, and that pace is in line with what we've seen previous years. But
Mhm.
especially as we look for like the holiday week, at the time of recording this, we're coming up to Fourth of July week next week.
Mhm.
We definitely have seen a pretty significant amount of pickup in, I'd say, the last maybe 7 days for that. And some of that is locals that are just now making their plans for what they're going to be doing for the weekend. But we're actually seeing a surprising amount of people coming from out of state too, that it's just, this is when they're starting to take a look. This is what their window looks like. And so that's something that we're definitely seeing as well as a trend.
Gotcha. So it's a term I don't really care for, but it's what everyone calls it. Bleisure. How much bleisure demand are you seeing your properties? Are people extending their stays, uh, you know, past the normal, business travel length, or are they coming in earlier the weekend to have some fun and then go to meetings all week?
So a lot of it we tend to see on the pre side of everything. When
Okay.
we have people that are coming in, especially on the corporate travel sector, especially meetings that we're hosting in house. If we have a meeting that's running Monday through Friday, a lot of the early that we're seeing are people coming in maybe that Friday before leading into it, or even that Saturday morning to try to catch a little bit of sun and spend some time at the hotel before they are confined to their meetings for the rest of the week. A trend that we're starting to see a little bit more and more is that there's less of it hanging out on the back end. A lot of people tend to seem like they want to get home at the end of their business travel, but maybe enjoying themselves a little bit on that front side.
That makes a lot of sense. By the end of the week, you're just ready to get home.
I hear that 100%.
So, as we touched on this a little bit as far as business on the books, but when you look to the remaining quarters and looking ahead even to Q1 for your properties, what's your outlook then?
Yeah, outlook is really bright for these hotels, and I feel for the surrounding market as well, just looking at what the star reports look like inside of the segment. So we had a really great start and high season here at these hotels, posting wins, both occupancy and rate, which is always a great thing. And summer is giving us that time to retool while we're still holding on to that regular pace and demand pattern that we look at. But looking forward at the rest of the year, as I had mentioned, Taylor Swift coming into the market, that does incredible things. I was in Atlanta when she had her tour there last year, and seeing the compression and the demand there. So we're definitely seeing some increased presence in fall. But then even with winter, we have a music festival, Rolling Loud, that typically is in the market over the summertime. That's typically a July piece. That's now moving right up against another major Miami event called Art Basel that's going to be down south. So we're seeing the compression that's coming from those two events being week after week. And then looking into quarter one, we're seeing our pace come through. We're still seeing that leisure come through from the Northeast, from outside of the U.S. It's between the major events on the horizon and opportunities with change of events. It's always a great feeling when you can be both realistic and optimistic, and they're one and the same thing.
I mean, what more can you ask for, right?
I know.
All right. Well, Jonathan, I think that's everything I had for you here. Is there any final thoughts that you have before we close up?
No, I really appreciate you taking the time, and I really enjoyed this. Thank you, Brian.
Well, thank you, and thank all of you for listening. Stick with Hotel News now for further coverage.
Hi, I'm Davon Reed.
I'm Omari Head.
And I'm Chris Henry.
We're the hosts of the Next Gen and Lodging podcast on the Hotel News Now podcast network. It's a monthly show in which we interview a new generation of hoteliers to get their insights into a variety of disciplines and topics, from finance to food and beverage and hotel operations. Listen to us on Spotify, Google, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening. This episode was recorded June 28th, 2024, and produced and edited by Brian Roden. Go to hotelnewsnow.com every day for the latest in hotel industry news.